The Bronze Legacy. To a brown boy. 'Tis a noble gift to be brown, all brown, like the strongest things that make up this earth, like the mountains grave and grand, even like the very land, even like the trunks of trees, even oaks, to be like these. God builds his strength in bronze. To be brown like thrush and lark, like the subtle wren so dark. Nay, the king of beasts wears brown. Eagles are of the same hue. I thank God, then, I am brown. Brown has mighty things to do.
The Bronze Legacy. First thing you generally want to pay attention to in a poem that you're first starting to read is the title. In this case, the title is The Bronze Legacy, and that can have an important impact on what the rest of the poem will be about and the sort of mood that follows throughout the rest of the poem. So let's break it down a little bit. First word that Effie Newsome chooses for the title is bronze. Now, bronze is a metal alloy, and it is a combination between tin and copper, which is very well known for being strong, durable, and hard. This becomes a theme that is recurring and constantly mentioned throughout the story, as it is one of the things that Effie Newsome hoped to emphasize. Newsome also used the word legacy in her title. Legacy is often referring to the future, and most likely something that they hope is good. With this poem, the legacy that Newsome talks about could either be referring to the legacy of the past African Americans and what they accomplished and hoped that their future people would accomplish when they fought for their freedom and their rights, or it could be talking about the future legacy that she hopes the African Americans at that time would leave for their future descendants and what she hoped would become of the African American race later on. She represents this idea of the future in two different parts of her poem. She refers to it first at the beginning, when she mentions different aspects of the land that are seen as signs of strength and share the same color, brown, as the skin tone of African Americans. She uses imagery in the hopes of empowering the African American race and additionally hopes to remind them what their core values were, what their core principles were, and where they really came from, which was a very common thing during the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance was mostly a return to their roots and their culture and what they really were. In the second half of her poem, she talks about freedom more, which seems to reflect more on their present day at that time, and it represents America and the struggle that they had there and what they could accomplish in the future at that point. She seems to hope throughout this poem that her words would inspire people to keep pushing and, keep fighting for change. Much like the Harlem Renaissance, Newsome portrays a return to their roots and an empowerment of the African American race, and she encourages them to keep pushing forward and to stay true to themselves and stay true to their values in order to accomplish a lot of mighty things that they have left to do.
With bronze being an important part of the poem, repeated multiple times, it is important to recognize how God is mentioned in the same line. God and religion are very important to the people of Harlem Renaissance, as most of them are religious. Different parts of the poem mention different things that represent or can represent the ideas that some of their religions may have shown, such as the birds and the different parts of the land, with how their strength and unity between all of the different ideas are represented. The poem also says in one of the lines where God is mentioned that the people are thankful to be brown, or at least should be, in the way that Effie Lee Newsome has been writing her poem, and how they're glad to be brown with its relations to the natural world and the animals while still holding all their strength together.
But it's strange that this poem that talks predominantly about organic stuff like nature is supposed to reflect the Harlem Renaissance. For example, in the first section, Effie talks a lot about stuff like earth and land. In the second section, stuff about plants and trees. And in the third section, a lot about animals. But how could all of this nature and organic things possibly ever reflect the booming industry of the Harlem Renaissance? Well, Effie Lee Newsome isn't literally commenting that the black community is a mountain. She's using this metaphor that they're grave and grand to comment on their strength, and she also compares them to a tree. How being brown is like being like an oak. Oaks are very notable for their strength and nobility. But probably most symbolic of all of these sections is when she talks about the animals. Effie mentions a thrush, a lark, a wren, and an eagle. And not only do all of these birds have naturally brown feathers, but they also are connected to very symbolic definitions. For example, a thrush is connected to solid relationships. A lark represents watchfulness and cautiousness, and a wren symbolizes stuff like cheerfulness. And obviously, an eagle is very notable for how it symbolizes stuff like freedom and spirit. All of these values, talking about the earth, the land, trees, birds, they all reflect values of the Harlem Renaissance. Specifically in black communities, how they held stuff like solid relationships, positivity, pride, freedom, and their nationality above everything else.
These ideas of the birds also represent the ideas or things related to religion, such as the eagle, who represents spirit, which the people of the Harlem Renaissance were very spiritual in the fact that a lot of them were religious, as said before. Another example of this is how one of the birds represents strong relationships, and the people wanted to have a strong relationship with each other as well as with the church to help support them and keep them strong because of the different problems that they face. They wanted to be strong and together. When they do that and are strong together, they're strong like bronze.
So, looking over everything we've covered, we've talked a lot about values, and we're looking at a lot of stuff that the Harlem Renaissance, specifically the black community, values in their society. Like, for example, we've talked about stuff like characteristics, and we've talked about religion. We've talked about how they value stuff like the mountains, the birds, the trees. They value these things because they're unstoppable. These things are a force of nature, and what Effie Lee Newsome is trying to do is that she's trying to empower the black community to a brown boy. She's giving this message to the black community. She's trying to empower them to do some social change. She's trying to tell them brown has mighty things to do. And so she's trying to give them confidence by comparing them to a mountain, which is unstoppable. In the end, what Effie wants is she wants a brighter future for the black community, and that's why she's trying to tell them what they have and tell them that they should be confident in what they have, because it's a gift and they shouldn't be ashamed of it.
The Bronze Legacy emphasizes the strengths of black communities in the Harlem Renaissance.
This poem reflects their appreciation and value of religion.
Newsome used her poem to spark a catalyst for change and push the black community towards the future. She helped lay the foundation for what was next to come.